Good morning, everybody. Robert Phoenix here with another edition of 15 Minutes of Flame. Life without melatonin is good. Sorry, I for a while I've been taking melatonin just to, kind of get that little sleep boost that we all need every now and then. But I've kicked melatonin. And it's good. I get up in a very different kind of place without it. I feel more rested. Melatonin it's good. I mean, it works. Clearly it works. But the morning after with melatonin is, let's just put it this way, it takes a while to get the car out of the garage. It is cold here in Austin. You might hear the pitter-patter of ice pellets hitting my window, because that's what's happening. We've had a major storm front come in last night, and it's going to be around the 20s today. It's pretty darn cold here. What's fascinating about this storm, I was shooting some emails back and forth with Steve Crimmy over the last 24 hours. And it's so funny. People send me YouTube videos, links, all the time. It's like, here, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? And so last night, Julie sent me a video with Deborah Tavares, who's back on the scene now. Some of you might know who Deborah Tavares is. She's actually pretty amazing. She's pretty amazing. The thing that Deborah Tavares does really well is linking the conspiracy, quote unquote, to really you want to talk the deep state. She gets into CAFR and what happens with our money, and it's fascinating, absolutely fast. She's able to really get into that kind of Roto-Rooter-esque deconstruction of how the funds are channeled and where they go and who the players are. And she was basically resurfaced, I guess, a couple of weeks ago, and was doing a talk about the fires in Northern California and the subsequent fires in Southern California and the mudslides, and looking at kind of where everything has been and where it's going. And it's stuff that I've talked about pretty consistently, for the last 10 years, to be honest with you, in varying degrees and iterations. But if you go back through my website, you'll see pretty much the current topic of conversation. The only additions now are the connection to 5G and the MIMOs. I'm telling you right now, this 5G thing is we got to stop it. I mean, it is going to be the death of us. I'm telling you right now. 5G is Atlantis on steroids, okay? These little MIMOs, they can't be more than like 800 feet apart. These little things are going to be everywhere. These are the new cell towers. They're going to be everywhere. They're going to be deployed everywhere. And if you're not on the 5G, this is a really important thing to know, to figure out. If you're not on the 5G network, I mean, think about this for a second. They've got to place these things 800 feet apart, these MIMOs. These are going to be the new cell towers. 800 feet apart. How are they going to cover the entire country with these cell towers? Well, the answer to that is that they're not. But they will cover heavily concentrated and dense areas. So we're talking urban areas. MIMOs everywhere. Where you won't see them, more than likely, is out in rural areas. So if you're in a rural area and you want to get on the internet, good luck. Not saying it won't happen, but it's going to be more difficult. This is why what I shared with you yesterday about what's happening in Colorado, people trying to take back the broadband, that is actually a really good thing. Look, this is going to get into today's talk. I'm going to talk about, what we can do. Because we can do things. And I made reference to my little tiny protest about not spending any more money on Netflix. So, anyway, let's get back to we're going to talk about this today. We've got a new moon coming up in Capricorn. It's a great, great time to set an intention, an emotional intention. And my emotional intention for 2018 is to dedicate myself even more to where we are and what's happening and what's not happening, and staying the course and doing absolutely my best to continue to sort of bring ideas together and people together and networks together. Because if we don't do it during this time with Saturn and Capricorn, I think we're screwed. I'm just being straight up here. Being really straight up. We've got, I would say at the outset, 3 years. 2020 is the portal. That's the portal. That's when they want to start to implement 5G in earnest, is in 2020. They're pushing it back a little bit to 2021. So, let's not take that other year off, just in case. Okay, we've got a lot of work to do over the course of the next year to 2 years. And this is going to be a challenging time because we're going to have to double task. Meaning that you're going to have to live your life the way that it is to the best of your ability and continue to pay for whatever you need to pay for. Probably getting out of debt would be a good thing if you can do it. That would be a really good thing. And we're going to have to build one track from this world to the next world that we theoretically want. What is it that we want? Well, we want skies that are clear and clean and fresh. And we don't give a shit whether or not the methyl sulfide is rising from the permafrost or the oceans. We don't give a shit if we're in a global cooling or global warming phase. We don't give a shit. We're tired of geoengineering. We'll take our chances with nature and the sun. And if the whole thing just slides right off the mantle and into the void, so be it. Okay, but let's get our skies back. We want our skies back. We want our food back. And that's going to take work on our part, okay? Capricorn is an earth sign. It's going to take work, which means that you're going to have to be healthy. You're going to have to be healthy, and you're going to have to cut out things that are not always in your best interest. That's the nature of Capricorn. Slice it away. Look, we got to get committed here. This broadcast today is about my commitment and re-upping my commitment and your commitment so that we can join forces, okay? This is what it's about. And I've been doing this for 10 years now. It all started when Pluto went into Capricorn, and here we are, Saturn going into Capricorn, or already in Capricorn. And so this is the time. I mean, you look at, so I got sent this video by Julie with Deborah Tavares. It's worth hunting down. And then Steve sent me another video, which is it was with a woman whose name escapes me right now, but she's kind of like, she sounds like she's South African. She sounds like the South African version of Deborah Tavares. They're basically talking about the same thing. They're talking about what's happening with the electric fence. They're talking about what's happening with 5G. They're talking about what's happening with these crime cartels. Now, Deborah Tavares calls it as she sees it. She's drilled down, basically has uncovered the fact that the Rothschilds own every single utility in this country. Every single public utility has the Rothschilds' thumbprints all over it. Does it surprise you? Does it surprise you? This other interview, they're talking about 007 Inspector. And it's like, it's a little occluded, right? Not at any point in the interview do they talk about the Rothschilds as being the head of the beast for this crime cartel. But Deborah Tavares, she parses it out, basically says, yeah, look, I drilled into it. PG&E, they're run by the Rothschilds. Every single utility corporation in this country, public or private, Rothschild stamps. And they're also controlling the weather, and they're also controlling the weather channels and the weather stations. So this is how you control the planet. You control the power grid, you control the weather, you control the people that report the weather. There you go. You invest heavily in geoengineering. So these are the forces that we're dealing with. I mean, we are in a pretty significant conflict with, call it the deep state, whatever you want to call it. Okay, we're in a pretty significant conflict here, and the goal, and this is another thing that Tavares maps out. And again, this is nothing new. We're kind of just revisiting it here. Is that depopulation is really the theme. It is all about depopulation. Again, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I've been talking about this for years. At some point, they're just going to say, look, we got all these resources in the United States. We got all these bank accounts. It's the highest degree of wealth that's possible on the planet, per square foot. Maybe the exception is Switzerland. But nobody's going to go in and depopulate Switzerland, guaranteed. So this is what's going on. It's like we're gonna take the wealth, we're gonna take the land, we're gonna take the resources, and we're going to eliminate as many people as we have to or need to, and we're going to implement AI. I know it's scary. I know it's scary talk. I know it's not warm and fuzzy, but look, it's cold out there right now. I got ice pellets hitting my window. And I'm not going to try to channel any of the minimal rays of sunshine that are in the sky right now and redirect them to you so that you could have a warm and fuzzy experience. So we have to understand the terrain that we're in. That's really important. If we don't understand the terrain that we're in, then we're lost. So we need to understand the terrain that we're in. We need to understand what our role and context inside of that terrain is. So let's just go over, kind of the checklist of, what we can do. Number one, you got to stay healthy. That is really essential. Stay healthy, stay healthy, stay healthy. And you're going to need energy. You're going to need human energy in order to move forward and put whatever it is that you are drawn to. You're going to have to put that energy towards that. And so we're going to have to get really narrow focused in some ways. Really, now, can we fulfill ourselves? I'm an astrologer. I work with people. I work with people on two tracks. Number one, I work with them in their own life, what they're doing, what their goals, dreams, aspirations are. We're still living for now in a 3D world with a fairly specific economic model. But we also have to prepare for any kind of alteration in that landscape. Be in this world, but not of it. Tether your camel first, then trust in God. So we're at a time where we're really needing to double track. So yeah, you can work on your earth game and your whatever that game is for now. But you've also got to look towards the fact that these people have a plan. They've got a plan. And, we're sitting around and and this is okay. I mean, it's okay to comment about North Korea and the stupid charade that's going on there. Or we can comment about Iran and, the failed coup. We can comment on these things. It's not like they should be out of the realm of conversation. But understand that those are out there for us to kind of bang our heads against. Meanwhile, there's a whole other script going on that we are not aware of. And these people are always, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of us. And if you're looking for Alex Jones or, most of the alt news gatekeepers to give you inside baseball, inside scoop as to what's going on, you're going to be lost because they're just reacting. And Alex Jones gets a lot of his information from his insiders. He even said that yesterday. he brought Steven Seagal, who I think might be the ultimate Khazarian, onto his show. And Steven Seagal is in hot water with Lisa Bloom and Gloria Allred. Apparently he was, a jerk with a woman on a movie set or something, maybe more than one. And why do I find that not unbelievable? Never considered Steven Seagal a very likable person, to be honest with you. I never watched his movies. I think I watched the first Steven Seagal movie where he did his Aikido stuff. And then after that, it's like caricature, caricature, caricature. And I just got the sense that this is not a good dude. He's just not a good dude. He's no Bruce Lee. So we had this hour-and-a-half interview with Steven Seagal. I think mostly because he wanted to save his... he wanted to get out in front of this Me Too stuff, in some ways. But also, because Alex Jones, and he admits this, he's got quote-unquote friends who are former CIA. If you think you are a former CIA, I think once you're in CIA, you're in. Even if you're out, you still have people inside the network. So this former thing probably doesn't mean a hell of a lot. But he basically said, well, Moby's got his friends. Moby has his friends, and his friends told him from the CIA that he should be promoting the Russian dossier and the Russian meddling in the Trump administration because Trump is the Manchurian candidate. So Alex basically said, well, hey, my guys from the CIA, quote unquote former, they said that I should interview Steven Seagal. Gee, okay. Then this is why I'm bringing it up. So look, if you are following, and I am not, I'm not a gatekeeper. Okay, I do my best to steer clear of any gatekeeping as much as possible. But if you're trying to find, and even QAnon is, I feel like, sort of the next level gatekeeper in some ways. One of the interesting things that did come out of this interview, I wish I could remember this woman's name now. That this guy, Mike Trim, his name is Mike Trim. Mike Trim. You can find his YouTube channel. Anyway, one of the things she said about QAnon, which actually made sense to me, was that she basically said, look, I don't have all these kinds of security risks or clearances, and I don't have any contracts with anybody, so I can be as transparent as I possibly can be, which is not the case with QAnon. Transparency is not something you would connect with and link up with QAnon. It's very cryptic. People love that cryptic stuff. Ooh, we're solving riddles. We're solving puzzles. And it's okay. I mean, the world is built on symbolism and cryptic information. So, people like a good Dan Brown novel. I do. I'm breaking down symbols all the time. It's part of who we are. We want to figure things out. But so where are we now? 16th of January. Still waiting for those indictments. I want to see some arrests, man. I want to see some perp walks. I know I talked about it on Off Planet Radio. The problem, one of the things that's the big challenge with the QAnon stuff and why people, and look, I'm going to hold like a space, a 10 to 15% space, but not much more. Because we've been down this path before. Leo Wanta, right? The Wilcock material. Benjamin Fulford. The White Hats. The White Hats were popular with 2011. The Black Hats, the White Hats. So we've seen this. We've seen this game before. Nasara. We've seen this played out before. And it's like, yes, yes, yes. Hope is a stallion that rides in from the east. But it's never paid off. You know what's going to pay off? It's going to be you. It's going to be you, me, and other people like us. And we're going to have to find ways now to organize. And I'm serious about this. We're going to have to organize. And this is the challenging piece. Many of us are so disconnected. I've talked about this before. We're so disconnected. And we're going to have to coalesce our energies. And we're going to have to also believe that we have truth and love and God on our side. I'm sorry. It's just the way it is. We're going to have to move forward in faith. I'm a crazy hybrid, aren't I? I'm talking about truth, love, and God, and then I'm talking about the new moon in Capricorn. No wonder sometimes it's like every now and then I watch my Twitter. You know, I do Twitter, but not that much. And I watch my Twitter followers. It's like I get up to about 172 and then they drop. I can't seem to get past 172 on Twitter. It's like, I like this guy. I don't like this guy. I like this guy. I don't like this guy. Anyway, so here we are, man. This is it. This is the new moon in Capricorn. If you have any kind of time over the course of the next 12 hours, maybe the next 24 hours, you want to really sit down and get in touch with your intention and get in touch with your own personal timeline moving forward. What do you want? What kind of world do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a soulless world where machines have taken over, where there's no sex? Because this is what the Me Too thing is doing. It's completely dropping a hammer on sex. Where there's no family, there's no progeny, there's no mentoring, there's no sense of continuity moving forward into the future. Is that the world that you want? And if you're young and you're listening to this, you really need to listen to this. What kind of world do you want? If you have the cojones, male or female, to step out of your paradigm, to step out of your cultural milieu, where sometimes it's very difficult to do, especially with Pluto and Scorpio, and all the generations moving forward, they're all transpersonal. These are all transpersonal generations. Pluto, Scorpio, Pluto, Sag, Pluto, Capricorn. They're different. These are going to be different entities. They're not going to operate in the same way as previous generations have operated. So, you know, all of us that are in that Pluto Leo, Pluto Virgo, Pluto Libra, some of the Pluto Libra people really relate to the millennials, and I can see why, totally. But we're going to have to disabuse ourselves of the notion that this world that's coming up behind us is going to be anything like our world, because it's not. It's not. That doesn't invalidate our world. But what it means is that we're going to have to come up with a new model. And a model that's going to be aggregated and to a large degree united on some level. Because if you don't have aggregation, if you don't have unification, if you don't have an organizing principle, what do you have? Well, you've got the United States circa 2018 with all these different factions and all these different special interest groups really, you know, trying to attain some sort of a land grab. Joe sent me a video a couple weeks ago, I think it was last week, about how great Japan and China are. And the video was basically, look how evolved these people. And there's a lot of evolution. There's a lot to be said for this video. But the one thing that Japan and China have in common is that they're homogeneous cultures. You don't see China open itself up to refugees. Now, I'm not being a xenophobe. I'm just making a clear distinction. You don't see them open themselves up for refugees. And you certainly don't see China do it. Dirty little secret about China. When China was involved in the slave trade, they would bring the males over to China, and then they'd castrate them. They're like, let's get one good working cycle out of them, and then they're done. That was the Chinese version. So just think about that for a minute. Think about the mindset that's associated with that. But they're able to move as one because they're homogeneous. They can make these decisions. They don't have 30 different special interest groups, 100 different special interest groups, 500 special interest groups, all clamoring to get a piece of the pie, all clamoring for attention and space and a place at the table. They don't have it. They don't have it. One of the reasons why Trump's MAGA has been so popular and appealing is because it is an organizing principle. Whether you like it, agree with it or not, it is an organizing principle. Now, the organizing principle is retrograde because it's looking backwards. It's looking back at how great America was. Well, when was America great? Was it the 60s? Is that the great America that Trump is talking about? I don't know. It was great in a different kind of way. It was a lot. If you wanted to get laid and get high, the 60s were great. Oh boy. And I'm sure maybe that might have been Trump's version of the great American experience around 1968 when he was, 21 years old? 22. Was America great in the 50s? The 50s are on the surface, the 50s look like they're kind of an interesting time. You know, we're done with the war. It's over. We just want to get back to living lives. We've got a bunch of men coming home with PTSD, which is never really talked about. We've got a bunch of kids that have been born. We have the birth of multimedia, television, radio, movies. They're all cohabitating together. Television in its nascent and early days. There's a lot of innocence in the 50s. But the 50s there's also kind of the beginnings of the seeds of discontent. That begins to take shape and take root in the 50s. You get into the late 50s and, it gets interesting. We get into beatnik culture. And again, all these movements they're astroturfed. Rock and roll was astroturfed. The beatnik movement was astroturfed. The folk music movement, astroturfed. And these producers look around and say, who can we get? Peter, Paul, Mary was the folk version of the Beatles. They put them together, right? The protest movement, all that stuff, astroturfed. It's all astroturfed. So America maybe had less, in some ways, dissension in the 50s, and there was maybe a little bit more cohesion. What about America in the 40s? We were involved in a war, and we blew up Nagasaki, we blew up Hiroshima. Now some people say there was no nuclear bomb. It was all a big fake. Whether it was a fake or not, we bombed the shit out of those cities, and the war was over. We allowed Pearl Harbor to happen so that we could get into a war with Japan. We froze the Japanese bank accounts, which is why they were pissed off. And so we goaded them into war, and we allowed it to happen. Japan, Pearl Harbor, total false flag. Was America great then? Because we had been guided and deluded by the Pied Piper of the global economy to participate in a war that we helped create. You look at the rise of the Third Reich in Germany, American industrialist fingerprints are all over it. Was that when America was great? Look, I'm an American, and I do believe that there is something special about this place, this country, this time. And we could be very close to some kind of, real test where good and evil are split right down the middle. And you want to talk about the splitting of the timeline. It just may just come down to that. So which side are you on? I'm not judging people. I'm not. But clearly, there are choices that we make. And sometimes we can be deluded into choices that are supposedly things that we think are good. And maybe, just maybe, they're not. And we have to be very discerning and pay close attention to that. So here we are at this point in time. And this is the new moon in Capricorn with all these planets in Capricorn. It's a good time to drill down and try to understand what your intentions are. What do you want? What kind of world do you want to live in? What kind of role do you want to play? You know what's out there. You've been listening to me for a couple of years now. You know what's out there. And I'm not the only person you're listening to. There are other voices out there. A lot of them are really informed. We're living in a time where there's more information available to us than any other time. Ever. And it's up to us now to figure out what we're going to do with it. And how we're going to deal with it. Did you notice Trump had just gone to Camp David? Anytime I see those Camp David visits, ding, 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 rings a bell. Oh boy. Has the president been compromised? Is Mr. Uber Gemini now an Uber clone? It's quite possible. I've talked about Camp David. I've talked about what happens at Camp David, facilities at Camp David. Anytime there's a Camp David visit, something's going on. There's a new model being rolled out of the lab. It's an interesting premise, nonetheless. I wanted to talk about the shithole comment. This is a very interesting development in a lot of ways. Now, supposedly he said this in a meeting, and Dick Durbin was there, and Dick Durbin is a Democrat from Chicago. So I think we can automatically get kind of a psychological profile of Dick Durbin. What would be Dick Durbin? We can automatically get kind of a cycle because he's Chicago. I'm sorry, we've gotten into Chicago. It is Chicago is it's in the heartland, right? It is the heart chakra of the United States, and that heart chakra is infested with worms. Chicago has heartworm. It's exactly what it has, and it's got maybe the wormiest mayor in the country, and there a lot of wormy mayors in the United States. But I don't think anybody reaches worm-like status more than Rahm Emanuel. So Dick Durbin decides to go public with the comment about the shithole. You see, this is the problem now when President Clone utters things. He's just got to, I don't know, again, I mean, I hearken back to this idea that somebody like Trump, the real Trump would be smart enough not to utter something like that in mixed company. And he may think it, unless, of course, he's playing 5D chess. In which case, these people are defending the shitholes so that when they get sent back, they'll say, well, they're not shitholes. They're great places. And you guys just said that. So if they're such great places, I'm sure they'll be very happy to go back. I mean, there can be that kind of chaos thinking in some ways, right? Even if it's not thinking, clearly you could spin it that way. It's like, well, hold on a second. We're just sending them back to these wonderful places that you guys were just, oh, Haiti's a wonder. It's like this guy Win Butler from Arcade Fire. Oh, I love Haiti. I love Haiti. It's one of the most magical places in the world. America needs more Haitian Americans. The guy's from Canada. He's from Quebec. If Haiti's such a wonderful place, then, then why do people want to leave? I mean, isn't that the paradox? That's the mindfuck, right? If these places are so great, why do they want to leave? So I put this post on Facebook about the shithole. And I said, look, let's be clear and honest. There are shitholes on the planet. And there are shitholes in this country too. Trust me, I've been to a few of them. And they may completely outrank international shitholes but they're still shitholes nonetheless. So how did these places become shitholes? Well, first of all, in many cases, we decided to spread democracy. We decided to spread democracy. Yeah, that's called regime change. Just take a look at Libya before Gaddafi was taken out, and Libya after Gaddafi was taken out. One is now a shithole. The other was actually a promising country based on this guy's vision about tapping into the aquifer beneath the Libyan topsoil and creating a veritable Garden of Eden in North Africa. That was his idea. That was his goal. He wanted the united currency for Africa. What was it? The real? Was that what it was? He's gone. Libya turned into a shit. This is what happens. We go to spread democracy and regime change. Okay, well, that's one version of it. Then we have the NGOs, who are kind of working, arm in arm through USAID, right? And they go in and they want to help. Hey, we don't really want to do a regime change. We just want to help. Oh, good luck on that. Good luck on that. The NGOs. Yep. And they go in and what do? Well, they're basically cover for multinational corporations. And they're going to go in and they're going to figure out who's in power, where the resources are, have some kind of program that looks like on the surface it's actually a good program and helping the locals. Meanwhile, what they're really doing is finding new ways to impoverish and put the locals in chains. Watch a movie called Darwin's Nightmare, and it's about the Nile perch. Watch Darwin's Nightmare. It'll change your life. It'll show you what happens with NGOs and really what the force behind most NGOs is. They are deep cover for more quote-unquote colonization, but it's colonization without any benefits. So now we have the NGOs, we have regime change, and then we have the IMF and the World Bank and people like John Perkins who go in to these countries who have messed up their economies and taken out big loans to the IMF and the World Bank and signed their resources over them for perpetuity. Which means that you're allowing corporations to come in and do what they want to do with the existing topography and the resources and turn them into shitholes. So there's a reason why these places have developed or underdeveloped or in a particular way. So I was called out on this by somebody on Facebook. And she said, well, don't you think that are you in favor of people from impoverished countries or poverty-stricken countries to come here or not? So the question is, if I say no, then I'm a cold-hearted son of a bitch, right? No, I'm not in favor. If I say yes, then I am essentially agreeing to something that I don't completely agree with. So you got to drill down really quickly and create a reason. Not even a reason, more of an argument as to why it's not a great idea. So my goal would be to somehow empower these countries to get back on their feet financially, in which case I'd zero their debt automatically. You're done. You don't have to pay anything back to the World Bank or to the IMF. Isn't that great? You get a fresh start. Total fresh start. That's number one. That's what I would do. In the case of Mexico, I'd get rid of NAFTA. Can't do it. I mean, you could, but it's not going to happen. And then I'd look at, hey, let's put a real hard stop on the drug cartels coming into this country. But good luck with that, because there are people in this country that profit handsomely off the drug cartels out of Mexico. And they're not going to like that very much. But if you wanted to do that, if you wanted to make a difference, you cut it off. And then you go back into Mexico and you say, look, we want to help the people. Let's get into some microloans. You want to make it so people don't want to leave. I mean, that's the whole idea. You want to make so because they want to say, hey, I want to stay here. I want to be with my family. I grew up here. I have roots here. You want to make that place more appealing and more economically viable and vibrant. What you don't want to do is to continue to make conditions so horrific that they have no other place or another option to go. At least that's me. But I think that from the perch, the pyramid of the economic, from the top of the economic pyramid, those are the types of decisions. We're going to impoverish these people, and we're going to take their resources, and we're going to bring them into countries and flood these countries, because that's the model now. That's the model. Deborah Tavares was making a really interesting point about the rebuilding of places in Santa Rosa. And there are already contracts in place. And the people that are going to be working on the rebuilding of Santa Rosa are not connected to this country. They're connected to a global syndicate. So the workers are going to come from other countries, and the people that are going to repopulate Santa Rosa are going to be from other countries. Now, I'm not a xenophobe. I like other cultures. I like other cultures. When I was in my 30s, I was deeply into world music. Okay? Deeply into world music. I was connected kind of tangentially to the Senegalese community in Oakland. My downstairs neighbor, great guy. Totally great guy. He's from Senegal. And he was immigrating here. And he was doing it the right way. He was going about it and filling out his paperwork. And this was kind of pre-flood. And he used to come to me for tarot readings. And I would like, hey, this is what I see, and blah, 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 blah. And super nice guy. Read for his daughter, read for his best friend. And every time I do a reading, he'd bring up a nice plate of Senegalese food, man. It was great. It was like this peanut curry with chicken, and I'd have this really powerful, strong, minty tea. It was overripe, and the curry chicken was over. I loved it. I think there's a lot that we can learn from one another. So I'm not some kind of xenophobe, but I also have to look at the fact that this is now turned into a situation that's been metastasized and weaponized. So I can't avert my gaze from it. So we have to make these places better for the people that are actually living there. And that's what the NGOs have tried to do, but they're really just cover for the CIA, intelligence, alphabet agencies, and corporations. Bottom line. I think you got to zero out the debt. That's a big deal. And start instituting things like microloans, and maybe we could take some of our really, really, really fat budget money that we give to Israel every year. Maybe take about I don't know, 500 million out of that, 750 million out of that, and redistribute it in terms of microloans. And manage some of these places. The Chinese are interesting. Getting back to the Chinese. You know what they do? They don't bring the people over. They bring the leaders of the people over. That's what the Chinese have been doing. The Chinese, man, they have gotten into Africa, and they have really put their stamp on Africa in terms of extracting the precious metals. The precious metals are the things that essentially wind up in your cell phone and your computers and all that stuff. And they've got mines, they've got operations all over Africa. They're building railroads all over Africa. And instead of bringing Africans to China, what they do is they bring the African leadership to China, and they school them. They school them in Chinese economic theory, Chinese rulership and leadership models and principles. And then they send them back to Africa. And these guys now become, they're their lieges in Africa. That's what the Chinese are doing. Here, it's a whole different story. Anyway, I was really trying to get to this point that the problem is not so simple. And the solution can be found if indeed we want to have a solution. Now, Trump, who is the uber populist, knows this, or at least the people inside of his inner circle know this. Because what they're doing is they're going after Pakistan and they're going after Palestine, Gaza, and they're cutting off aid to these countries. And the Pakistanis, who have nuclear weapons, theoretically, they'll just make different ties. They'll make different bonds and different relationships. They'll work with the Chinese or they'll work with the Russians. They won't even bat one eye. So one has to wonder if indeed there is a button in the White House. And the button isn't there to ignite a nuclear first strike with North Korea, but maybe the button is there to ignite a first strike against this country and the people of this country. Maybe that's what the button is there for. By the way, the Olympics are coming up, and it looks like North Korea and South Korea are going to have their united team. That's what it feels like. They're going to march together in the Olympics. This must piss off the globalists to no end because they want to flip North Korea and get them out of their unalloyed status. They want to get them into the World Bank and the IMF, just like all the rest of the slave nations on this planet are. Be interesting. Keep your eyes on the Olympics. It's going to be very interesting. I read this article today, and it was on the Daily Beast, I think. And it was about Kim Jong-un and his education in Switzerland, which I talked about. By the way, it was Kim Jong-un's birthday 2 days ago. Capricorn. How about that? He's got Saturn right on his sun. It's big time. Big time for young Kim. So he went to school in Switzerland, and maybe I should read this thing if I can find it. It's going to take me maybe just a minute here, but let me see if I can find this article. Give me 1 second. It's going to be near the top. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, we got the first charges brought in Uranium-1 scandal. Keep your eye on that. Let's see. Big donors. Buffett Gates should worry as FBI investigates Clinton's charity. Okay. Where is this thing here? Oh, hold on. Let me go over here. 1 sec. Let me just see if I can find this. Because I'm going to give you an example of mind control. Real simple. And through the press, okay? And so this Kim Jong-un article, let me just find it. Okay, here we go. Let's see, let's keep going here. Okay. I don't want to have too much dead air. Let me see if I can do things at the same time. So, this piece on Kim Jong-un talks about what he was like in boarding school in Switzerland. And everybody who this writer interviews says he was, he kind of had a quick temper, but he was a really fun-loving guy. a very fun-loving guy. And they wanted to say, hey, how can I get in touch with him? He loved basketball. He had a huge collection of basketball shoes. And he was there in Korea, North Korea, under an assumed name, said that he was the son of a diplomat, when it's actually really, of course, his father's son. And but the way that the article was written, God, I wish I could find it. Maybe I'll talk about it tomorrow. It's totally fascinating. Let me go back up to the top here, so I can find it at the top. Because the way the writer wrote this thing was, she was painting Kim Jong-un as like the Antichrist. I mean, it was very intense. And then you read through everything. It's like, well, what these people are saying does not really match the first 3 or 4 paragraphs of this story. And then finally, when he gets to paragraph 6, she talks to somebody from the CIA. And then you get the profile. It's like the confirmation of the profile, which takes it right back up to the first 3 paragraphs and about, you know, what a mean, sadistic, psychopathic son of a bitch he is. It was really interesting. I'm going to find it. I'll read it tomorrow on the show. So just, you know, check that box. Sorry I'm not that funny today. Yesterday I was in a funny mood. Today I'm in a more serious mood. I'm in a Capricornian mood. And I really want to transmit that level of seriousness and clarity to you to the best of my ability. And hope you pick up on it. And can take the next 24 hours to really examine what kind of world you want to live in. We're on the clock. Do we want to live in an Agenda 21, Agenda 2030 world that is populated by MIMOs, and we're living in a dense 5G electromagnetic prison? Is that the world you want to live in? We do want to live in a different kind of world. And if you do, what does it look like? You know, send comments on the YouTube channel. Yes, put your comments in there. What kind of world do you want? I think that's the best place to start. And then finding some level of unity. And it's not a unity based on, you know, any kind of demarcation or split that the magicians of the planet have created with left and right and black and white and all. No, it's a unity that has values associated with it, and it doesn't necessarily, it has no meaning or no connection to that split and duality reality that is constantly being pilloried against us every single day. Bill had a very funny comment. It wasn't a funny comment. I think he was actually being very inquisitive. He said he looked at the list of like the top 25 serial killers, and they were all mutable signs. And he wanted to know what I had to say about that. And I thought about it, and I thought, well, okay, what are the mutable signs? Gemini, Pisces, Sagittarius, and Virgo. So my answer is, Gemini is, of course we know Gemini is a borderline sociopath that knows how to get along in society, and front its borderline sociopathic ways. So we can put Gemini, you know, in the functional sociopathic role. Sagittarius thinks it's God. Pisces becomes possessed at the drop of a hat, triggered by a commercial or a seemingly disincarnate voice. So Pisces can lose control and become obsessed. And Virgo is just so neurotic and paranoid that they are more than willing to sacrifice neatness and cleanliness in order to eliminate the chaos and the threat in their environment. There you go. There's your models. See, nobody gets left out there. I love Gemini. Don't get me wrong. I think Gemini is a fascinating sign. I've got Gemini, my 7th house. I've got my Chiron in the 3rd house, which is Gemini's house. So I love Gemini. Really interesting. But, you know, just calling it as I see it sometimes. Gemini's an interesting sign. Yeah, it feels like I know a lot about Gemini in my own way. Hey, I'm a mutable sign. Just checked in. If I'd been born a half an hour later, I'd been Cardinal Libra. Cardinal Libra. It's got a nice ring to it. Cardinal Libra. All right. There you go. That's it for today's show. And for those of you who are in the grips of another polar or subpolar vortex, stay warm. Stay warm. Don't give in to the fear. Just hang out. Maybe invite your neighbors over for a little hot cocoa. Nothing in the hot cocoa today. No, we're in Capricorn now. We want to keep it lucid and clear. All right. That's it. I'll be back 24 hours from today. Any comments today? Let me just check. No comments. You know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. And have a fantastic